Hello and welcome to the FormABLE podcast. My name is Jamie Sparling. I am the head instructor of Affinity Martial Arts and Wellness in Wausau, Wisconsin. Today I have MKG Coventry head instructor Mick Tully. Now, in my interview, I actually had said that he was from Dublin. I'm just geographically challenged. So, all my European friends, you probably already knew that anyway. So, anyway, without further ado, please enjoy episode 11 of the FormABLE podcast. But before you do, if we could like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Also, drop us a comment and let us know what you thought about the episode. Hello, my name is Jamie Sparling. I am the head instructor of Affinity Martial Arts and Wellness in Wausau, Wisconsin. Welcome to the FormABLE podcast, where we talk about formable moments in martial arts and in the lives of martial artists. Today, I have my good friend Mick Tully from across the pond, as they say. He is in Dublin, Ireland, and he is the owner and chief instructor of MKG Dublin, or the Minnesota Kali Group in Dublin.
I'm in Coventry, brother. I'm transplanted. Yeah, I'm MKG Coventry. I mean, don't worry, Jamie. Well, keep that one in please keep that in because my good friend James Devine owns MKG North Dublin, and I actually went to school. I lived in Dublin, went to school in Dublin. But yeah, I'm a transplanted Irishman. I'm as you said, we can talk about anything we want, but you know, I'm the epitome of a disenfranchised First Nationer, mate. I was in Ireland, got thrown out of Ireland, and straight into the bosom of the Queen, brother. Well, God rest her soul, she's dead now. And the crazy thing about life is, as you get older, you start realizing that, the Queen especially. Bear in mind, I'm a Republican. I'm Irish, right? So I believe in the United Ireland. But with the Queen, I think history is going to be kind to her. Yeah, you look at what her job was. We'll talk about this because I know you want to talk about how things have changed, not just in the world of martial arts, but in the world in general. And when the Queen was put on the throne, man, that people were cheering in the streets, millions of people. And then bit by bit, people started to get more and more pissed off with the monarchy and stuff. And it's her role changed a lot. And there's the average guy in the street in England will say that they bring in a lot of tourism. The royal family do, yeah? But Mickey Mouse brings in a lot of tourism from America. And the last time I checked, you didn't have to get down on one knee and pledge allegiance to the House of Mouse. Not yet, anyway.
It's coming.
Yeah, Bob Iger has it. Bob Iger has his way. He'll have us all watching Snow White and saying it's good. But yeah, thanks. As I said, I'm actually from England, but I'll let you carry on. I had to jump in there because we'll do that. So, Jamie, tell us what we're going to talk about today.
Today, I think we're just going to have a good conversation, talk about the state of affairs in the world, different things, martial arts, formable moments in martial arts. You know, those things that sometimes aren't awesome and sometimes are, but they leave an imprint on who we are as a person. I just was able to listen to the podcast you did with Empower Martial Arts Online. And by the way, folks, if you're not familiar with that, like and subscribe my channel as well as theirs, because they're doing some incredible work. And one thing that hit me, Mick, is that literally there was a small short video and it said, and you had said, well, tell me you're afraid of grappling without telling me you're afraid of grappling. And I loved that. That hit me so hard. I'm working on my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt right now. And thank you, brother. I've been in and out of Jiu-Jitsu with different moving and injuries and different things, you know, and grappling can be a little bit scary. Let's just call it for what it is. It's one of the few martial arts where immediately you get down to when the shit meets the shovel and you spar and play with it, and some days it doesn't work out quite like it did in the technical arena. It's one of the things I like about it.
Well, you see, you just hit on something there. You see, so with Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you know, out of all of the martial arts I've done, it's the one, it's my love-hate relationship, because I naturally found everything else quite easy. And I think the fact that, so grappling's funny because I'm quite well known for, I cause a lot of mayhem on Facebook. If you follow me, apologies. My daughter-in-laws tell me that they won't follow me on social media because they say you're such a lovely man in real life and such an inspirational guy. And then they say, but like, you come off as a bit of a jerk on social media, which I try to explain that if you can't be a jerk in this ersatz contrived, totally unrealistic landscape that is social media, where can you be a jerk? You know what I mean? Like, be the idiot there, because the person on there, Jamie, you know, you go on Instagram and you see these girls, and these girls are like, man, they make Lizzo look like they're like Lizzo's doing CrossFit. These girls are huge and they've got this filter on, and you go, but you don't look anything like that in real life. And for me, I look at that and I think, I don't think that's going to be good for you, because what you're doing is you're living out what you perceive you look like, maybe internally. Yeah, it's a bit like Shallow Hal, the movie, right? You know, on the inside they're beautiful, and on the outside they're awful, vice versa, right? And I just don't think mentally that's very good for you. So when I talk about social media and people say, oh, you're nothing like that in the real world, my dear friend, I love him to death, Kurt Cornwell. I've got to give a shout out to Kurt. I love the guy like a brother. He's unreal. His wife, Amariah, is easily one of the nicest people I know. His children are wonderful. But Amariah comes in sometimes, and Kurt's told me that she'll just come in and she'll have a phone and she'll just go like this. She'll go, Mick makes it so hard to love him sometimes. Yeah, because I'll just put something up. And 9 times out of 10, first of all, the thing is, it's only my opinion. And at the end of the day, I'm a drywall contractor who strangles his friends and hits them with sticks every now and again. I'm not like a mover and shaker in the world. Yeah, I'm certainly not a policy maker. So the thing is, if it's just my opinion, take it for what it is, an opinion of an Irish construction worker, right? And you're like, right, and you're going to get pissed off with what I've said. And then I've had a couple of guys say, yeah, but you've got this platform and you should go out there and, you know, try and be a change in the world. And I'm like, dude, you've read too much Maya Angelou, too much Ayn Rand, and you've listened to far too much life coaching. You know, I'm too busy creating a good world for me and my immediate family and my friends. Yeah, this is one of the problems that we've got in today's society is everybody wants to be Bono. They want to go out there and change the world, man. And you're like, right, okay, you want to be Bono, really? So you want to be a guy who doesn't even live in any country now because he's a tax exile, because like his offices are in Luxembourg. He says he's Irish, but won't live in Ireland because he doesn't want to pay the taxes there. He'll tell you, a guy who's basically making it pay, that you should give more money to some poor person in another part of the world. And you're like, but dude, you could change the world in a heartbeat. And the other one as well is with Bono, people don't realize, guy owns 60% of Facebook. You know, he bought big into Facebook. Yeah. So, you know, this is the thing, Jamie, like all these characters who are telling you how to live your life, you're like, right, okay, you better not start throwing any stones here, guys, because that's a glass house you're living in. So anyway, I literally got off on a tangent there, but that's my ADHD brain right there. If you want to know what it's like living in my head, this is it, right? So grappling, it was difficult because martial arts, to start off with, if you don't mind, I'll backtrack it a little bit. So I started martial arts because as a child, I had a pretty horrific upbringing. I was beaten up, as is mentioned in Ireland. We mentioned about living in Ireland, right? So I was born in England, went over to Ireland at 9 years of age, yeah, with an English accent. That was around the time when we were still like, we were bombing each other. Like, we weren't just arguing and, you know, sending each other bad tweets, you know what I mean, or setting fire to a Tesla. We were literally bombing pubs with people in them, right? And we were bombing shops. We were like, it was just horrific, yeah? And then you had the British Army, who basically, since the First World War, have had a military presence in Ireland, right? So I went over to Ireland with an English accent, Didn't go down too well, Jamie, let me tell you that. So I had the shit kicked out of me while I was there. And then it didn't really work out for us in Dublin. So we moved back to Coventry. But within 2 years, a young kid will pick up an accent, right? Mm-hmm. So I come back with an Irish accent. So I have the shit kicked out of me. So I'm an English bastard when I'm over there. And then I'm an Irish bastard when I come back to England, right? So I was getting beaten up at school. I was getting beaten up at home. I was already pretty good at working out coping mechanisms. I was at a few times in interviews. You know, there's 6 bus stops. There were 6 stops on the bus from where I went to school to like the bus terminus in town. And when you're in a big city, you can hide immediately. Mm-hmm. But I was stuck on that bus for 6 stops. And every single one of those stops, I had an exit strategy for 3 separate exit strategies. If I got into like say I was getting bullied or I got chased off the bus, and I just made sure that I knew the terrain better than anyone else, right? And that was just purely out of fear. You know, I'd like to be able to frame it and say it was self-preservation, but it wasn't. It was just I was shit scared, and I got so tired of getting beaten up. And then my moral code, yeah, I'm a lapsed Catholic, but my moral code was shaped not from like faith, but was from American comic books. It's why I've always loved America, and why, especially for me, the Midwest mm-hmm. holds a real place in my heart. You know, like not only yourself, but all of my really dear friends in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. They're just good people. It's one thing that I always loved about the Midwest was, I think I used to rationalize it with the fact that you had a common enemy, which was 4 months of Arctic weather every year. So yeah, like, no matter how pissed off you were with each other, you were never as pissed off with each other as you were with just being stuck in the house and having to leave your car plugged in and stuff like that. But anyway, America was like the promised land to me when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So, you know, again, the great thing about the media is like first time I went to America, I was like, couldn't understand how it was a lot grimier than where I'd seen a few grimy things. Yeah, I'd seen Serpico, so I knew that parts of America could be rough, right? Uh-huh. But I was like, well, where's all the picket fences? You know what I mean? And yeah, you know, I couldn't really work that one out. But yeah, as I said, I was really big into American comics. And not so much Marvel. I've always said this before. I've got a friend of mine. I've got to give a shout out to my mate, Gay Steve. And Gay Steve used to always say to me, he goes, first time we ever talked about comics, he said, you're a DC fan? And I went, yeah. He goes, yeah, figures. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, you're a straight guy. And I went, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you know, I'm a Marvel guy. And I said, why? And he said, well, you know, you look at all the heroes in Marvel, they've all got frailties in their real lives as well. You know, Peter Parker still lives with his grandmother. The Hulk's an angry bastard with mental health issues. Mm-hmm. You know, Thor's a god that's been thrown out. Tony Stark's an alcoholic. You know, so you had all these things. And for me, it wasn't really that. Mine was, my world as a child was real and it's horrible. So I needed escapism. So I didn't want New York City with Spider-Man. I needed Metropolis or Gotham City or Central City where the Flash lived. I'm showing or Coast City. You know, that's what I wanted. I wanted this. Again, my brain goes off on tangents because I wanted that world that those guys in Rockefeller Plaza who used to work for DC Comics who were like, they were a bit like, you know, like Siegel and Schuster and Jack Kirby and guys like this, but like their lives sucked really. So why the hell would they want to write? They wouldn't want to write about where they lived. They wanted to write about a utopia. And as I said, my mate Steve said to me, he goes, you look at it, he goes, Batman, his alter ego is a billionaire. You know, his alter ego is Elon Musk without being a douchebag. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. You know, if you were Elon Musk, I'd be Iron Man. You know what I mean? That's that's what I'd be doing, or I'd be Batman, right? But anyway, like, you know, Wonder Woman, she's a god. Yeah, the Flash, that is a police scientist. Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, he was a billionaire. You know, it's like even down to like the ultimate immigrant of all time, Kal-El, right? So Superman came from this faraway country with this strange name, and then he had to pretend he was something he wasn't. So, like, you know, I don't think that the comics realized like the mythology that they were creating. But having said that, Shakespeare says there's only 7 types of stories, so you're only gonna get one of those stories, right? So anyway, American comics, I used to read it, and like even the adverts were great. X-ray spectacles, you know what I mean? It was like sea monkeys. You're like, wow, do they look like monkeys? No, they don't. So anyway, that whole diatribe I just gave you there was the fact that growing up reading American comic books made sense to me. That's why I never liked anti-heroes, because what is it that like good will always prevail, good always beat evil, evil or shades of grey. Yeah, and they go, oh well, it's he's not a bad guy, and you're like, yeah, but now we're going into the ends justify the means. Now we're talking like Greek philosophy level stuff here. Back in the day, when you're like a 9-year-old kid, Batman, you don't see him as a sociopath. You see him as a guy who's fighting for good. And then you look at it and you go, well, some of those drug dealers that he beat up, maybe they were just victims. You know what I mean? He was catching them at the wrong time. So anyway, my whole moral code was based on this. And then I was thinking, right, I can't get bitten by an radioactive spider.
Probably not.
No, I'm not going to get bombarded with gamma radiation like the Hawk. I haven't got $1 billion, but as I've said before, and I'll say it again in a lot of podcasts, Bruce Wayne, at least my parents were still alive. You know what I mean? Not like you, orphan boy. But anyway, I can do that. So I was like, so how can I change who I am? Because I don't know. And that was like that's the thing. I was like, how can I be who I really need to be? That I know deep down I am. And then it was like martial arts is the vehicle. And then, as I've said time and time again, I just replaced getting beaten up by amateurs, guys who couldn't fight, because bullies can't fight. Because if they could fight, they'd be fighters, right?
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Yeah. So then I just changed it. I started getting beaten up by guys like Andy Margaret, Alan Hine, Jeff Thompson, Al Peasman, guys like this. Guys who could actually fight, who'd work the door, who were tough guys. And then it was just a case of I just immersed myself in that world. And then, as I've said this quite a few times, I don't really believe anyone gets good at anything. Yeah, I think that there's a very few people in the world, the Kobe Bryants of the world, maybe like Michael Jordan to a degree, like Gretzky, but all of these guys, like they're greats. They're like beyond human, right? But then you look at them and it's like Gretzky says statistically, I missed more shots than I ever made. And then it's like, it's like MJ said, Michael Jordan said, he goes, I miss 100% of the shots I don't take as well. You know what I mean? And so my whole thing is, you don't get good at something. You just run out of ways of being really shit at something. It's like, just keep going. So with karate, I did quite well. Then I went over to Germany and started doing Wing Chun and Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. And because there's a correlation between them, I didn't find those difficult. Then when I got into Muay Thai, I didn't find Muay Thai difficult at all. It was just, sorry, but, I'm paraphrasing Tony Montana here, but there's nothing you can do to me that Castro's never done to me before, yeah? So, of course, like, there's nothing they could do because, like, what you think I'm scared of you? Sorry, but I'm not an 8-9-year-old guy get beaten up by a 15-stone blaster run out. This isn't going to work. And then jiu-jitsu was the one, because the first time I ever did it, I literally, as I said, I went over to a place called the Custard Factory in Birmingham, and Mauricio Gomez taught a class, and this guy just battered me. And then we were talking afterwards, and I said, how long have you been training? This stage, I was, I want to say I was at least 12 years in the martial arts, maybe 14 years in the martial arts. And how long have you been training? 3 months. And I was like, there's no way a guy with 3 months training can do this to me. And then what I did was I just pretend, I like a lot of victims, I just pretended it never happened to me.
Yes,
but then
sir.
the problem is that always comes back to haunt you. Yeah. So you've got, as I don't want to sound like a hipster, but there's certain things you've got to lean into, Jamie. There's certain things when it comes in, you go, oh, no, I've got to go towards that. So I dodged it. And then I jumped in. And then for you, as I said, congratulations, purple belt, mate. You're in now. You see, the thing is, Jamie, like just stay injury free. Avoid 22-year-old 22-year-old roided up kids who are taking TRT. You know, like at 22, you don't need TRT, bro. Yeah. You know, that's like a guy who's using hair loss removal and he's a chimpanzee. It's like, dude, you got more than enough testosterone to do you at the moment. So avoid those guys. And it's like Joe Rogan says, a purple belt is literally a black belt who just hasn't had his time in yet. He needs a little bit more time getting there. And then the beauty is nowadays, when they go black belt, you go, well, there's black belts and black belts. Yeah, of course there's black belts and black belts. Like, as a 56-year-old man, I can't be expected to be able to, I can hang with guys in their 20s, but I shouldn't be, I use that thing, where Steve Buscemi has got the skateboard over the back of his head to me. Hey there, fellow students, how you doing? With some old guy trying to be a young guy, and you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I say this all the time at jiu-jitsu guys. I always say to them, you got to remember, I'm not saying I'm General Patton, but I'm up there. Like in comparison to experience, I've been in a few theatres of war. We send young guys like you out to war. Mm-hmm. I'm here now. Maybe you can learn from me. Me now, where I am in martial arts, I've given more than I think I don't need to give that much more. I taught class today, loved it. Got a very receptive bunch of guys. I love them. Don't ever want to get into another fight again in my life, a real fight. Even though I had a guy jump out of his car yesterday on me, and he got out of and he jumped out of his car. So it's a Polish guy, and he jumped out of his car, and he was all aggressive, and I was like, and then my wife was with me. Like, the thing is, my wife hadn't been with me, I'd have just filled a bit. So the thing is, my wife's very good at keeping me balanced, and he got out of the car, and I'm thinking, right, I can't really get out of the car because, like, say this guy gets lucky, or say this guy can fill me in,
Mm-hmm.
Oops. And the other one was, it was like, I just got out and I went, everything all right? And then because I wasn't scared, he was like, oh shit. Because jumping out of the car must have worked for him quite a few times, Jamie. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you get this huge serotonin boost when the guy doesn't want to fight and you're ready to go and everything like that. And I got out and I went, yeah, everything all right, mate? And he lost the ability to speak English very quick and jumped back into his car and went. But yeah, as I said, nowadays martial arts, I just want to keep moving. I just want to follow that Danny Santo example. But last time I saw you in person,
yes, sir,
it was in Minnesota. You had a couple of young kids down. Remember, I was explaining to them. Now I'm the guy who speaks in a funny voice.
Yeah,
you only hear. Yeah, do you remember that? Yeah,
they loved kids, that. Right? They still talk about that. One of those kiddos, he was just in a hospital. He went through a little health spurt. He's doing better now, But they really enjoyed that. And also, full disclaimer, not a purple belt yet. 3 stripes on the blue, working on it.
Yeah, but you're getting that.
And I absolutely love and adore it, as well as the comic book talk, brother. Yeah. Super stoked for that. Myself, I was bullied all the time in the same thing. You end up looking for exit strategies at times, and meanwhile, you're like, if I just had a tool. If I had a tool or I met a sensei or a game changer like they did, then I'm going to be okay, right? That's the rub. I'd love to be up or down, but maybe the whole point is just to be okay, like, not yin or yang, but the line in the middle. Not popular.
Well, but you see, you've hit on something here, Jamie, right? So, bear in mind, you're supposed to be asking me the question, but this is my question to you, right?
Yes, sir.
At what point in your life did you realize and get pissed off with the fact that you just said what I wanted? Like, so when I started training, my first sensei was Andy Margaret, and I wanted him to be a Mr. Miyagi figure, but he became my friend, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh man. And then Terry Barnett and Rick Fay, they became like a sensei figure as well, but they became my friend as well. Mm-hmm. So the reason I'm saying this is I wanted a hierarchy. So I wanted somebody to keep me accountable, that I'd be answerable to. And then these guys, they didn't do that. they basically helped and elevated me to their level. So then I became their peer. Yeah, and I would never say that I'm their peer,
Yes,
but that's what they did. They created it so that I would become that guy. And then I remember turning around. I remember clearly because I remember the kid, and I won't mention his name, but I had a kid come and train with me, and we were chatting away. And as we were chatting away, I was absolutely wounded, gutted, because I was like, shit, I've become the guy that I wanted. And then that was what pissed me off because I was like, no, I don't want. I'm not Mr. Miyagi. You know, I'm a bad John Lawrence, maybe. You know what I mean? It's like, but it was that whole thing where you get into martial arts thinking you're going to get something, and then you get given something completely different, and it's a gift. Like, yeah, I really believe that when people say it's a gift, because if you were able to control it, then is it really a gift? Because that's something you wanted and you got.
Mm-hmm.
You could have done that yourself. A gift is when you're given something by somebody. You go, I never knew I needed that. It's like a toolbox. It's like that's I love that JKD analogy where it's like, everybody needs that sledgehammer. That's the big right hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, grappling's the same. What do I need? I know I need a big shovel. So what's my big shovel? That's my single and my double leg takedown. That's great. Yeah, but what about when I'm not a butcher or a construction worker? What about when I'm a sculptor or I'm a surgeon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's when you realise you were given all these gifts, and then 9 times out of 10 you didn't even realise. Like there's that classic line from Larry Hartsell where Larry Hartsell says, "I come in here." He goes, "You guys think like Sifu Larry go, you guys think that I'm your teacher? I'm not. No, I'm giving you tips, and I'm giving you tips on gardening." And he says, I come in, and you guys have all got, most of you got nice gardens already. So I come in, and what I'm giving you is basically, I'm giving you fertilizer. And there's another word for that, right?
Yes, sir.
And so, yeah. And he goes, right. So if you don't know if it's fertilizer, you just think it's a load of horse shit, but it'll help you grow. And as I said, the martial arts thing's really funny because the more I've stayed in it, I don't know about you, the more lessons I've learned about everything outside of the dojo, way more. It's made me, I remember Rick Fabian, one of the first guys I ever met. Bob Breen would be right up there as well, where these guys are, I'm quite a loquacious guy, and I truly believe that, somebody with a limited vocabulary, it's a tragedy. It's like that thing, where Plato says one of the greatest tragedies in life is for a man not to be able to see what his true potential was.
Yes.
Yeah. And then like when you speak to people and it's not even some of the times I spoke to Rick especially, and you just listen to it and his vocabulary is so rich. And, and Bob Breen's exactly the same. And you're like, I just want to be smarter. And I remember thinking to myself, I got tough because I just decided one day I was going to be tough. I say this to my apprentices at work. I'm like, I just decided one day I was going to be smart. And they were like, how? And I went, just started reading loads of books. And they were like, yeah, but how does that make you smart? And I was like, but I'm not smart. None of us are. It's Isaac Newton time here. We only see so far because we stand on the shoulder of giants. Yes, I'm not smart. What I am is I'm a guy who can read a lot of stuff, and then I can bang quotes out to you, and you'll go, wow, Mick Tully, he's such an enlightened man. And you're like, I'm not enlightened at all. What it is, difference between me and a lot of other people is I remember an inordinate amount of shit. And you'll know this now, Jamie. It's like, when you start meeting white belts and they wanting to tell you their name, and you're like, right, I'm getting up to the point now where my memory is, I don't have that much accessible memory left.
Yeah, brother.
And I can't buy 2 terabytes like any more of Steve Jobs and just throw it on the cloud. It's all up here now. And I'm like, I remember some white belt's name he gives up jiu-jitsu. I'll still remember his name and I'll forget my wife's birthday. I can't have that. You know what I mean? I have to see which one's which. But yeah, I've learned loads, man. It's mad. But I'm interested to get you to throw some questions at me, brother. Yeah, because I'll talk shit forever. Yeah, that's
I'll let you.
When you stare at walls all day, brother, trust me, it's one of them. So ask me anything.
Sure. I thought it was fascinating what you said is one day you just decided you were going to be smart. And what I heard was one day you decided you were going to give yourself a chance, right? And that's such a big deal, and it's really funny. My very first martial arts instructor, his name was Steve Fristo, my first Kali instructor. He was visually impaired, and
Wow.
he was African American albino, and
Yeah.
he absolutely, like, he couldn't necessarily see very well, so he was famous for walking around in our town kind of hunched over with these big glasses. But if people knew who he was also the local comic book person, right? Because literally I would have people that would like, have you heard of Steve? Yeah, I'm his number one student. And I'd be like, oh, well, I pretty much pick him up and take him home for the past 3 years, and I've never met you. I'm at all the
Yeah.
classes, you know,
Yeah.
but people always knew of him. In a way, I had that martial arts kind of hero kind of experience, something that was right out of a movie. But you're
Yeah.
right. What made it special was he became my friend and was able to say things to me, and I heard him that other people were telling me, and I was young, and I couldn't hear what they were saying because I would look at all
Mm.
of like their issues or whatever it is and be like, how? I don't know. But if he
Mm.
told me, I moved to New York City because he told me. He
Yeah.
said, well, planes go both ways.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And prior to that, wasn't
No.
going to live there. Many of my friends were like, you have this opportunity. Why is it that you won't want to do it? But I was scared. I mean, I'm living in Springfield, Illinois. There's 100,000 people. Threats of violence a good majority of the time. Pretty sure it's going to get turned on me. And then
Yeah.
somebody's like, "Do you want to move to New York City?" Like, you mean like dong dong, right? Like, like serious crime. I was like, "No way." But
Mm.
Steve just let me know, like, planes go both ways, and I heard him. You know what I mean? So sometimes that's
It-
the part we play. Does that make sense?
yeah, 100%. Well, you see, it's so funny you're saying this because I remember I was a 16-year-old kid and I just started martial arts. And yeah, you dreaming one day of, like, I remember seeing The Way of the Warrior TV show with Danny Santo when I was
Mm-hmm.
14. And I was never a Bruce Lee fan. I still say it. I still say it to this day. I always get, like, the thing in England, like, we have a big Punjabi community, Sikh
Mm-hmm.
community.
Yeah.
And there's, well, it's not just Pakistani's got a great cuisine as well. So years ago in the 80s, when I was growing up and going to pubs and stuff, like, pubs would shut at 11 o'clock. You know, the English were crazy. They brought this in after the First World War or during the First World War. And then they never changed their licensing laws because they couldn't trust people. So what they do is they would open the pub from, say, 11 o'clock, and then it was shut again at 1 o'clock. And then you wouldn't be able to buy a beer until 7 o'clock because they knew that people would just stay out and drink all day. And the only thing that stopped them was the fact that they didn't have any money,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what we had like, all pubs used to shut at 11 o'clock. Then you'd have a nightclub that would be open for 3 hours. So that would be 11, 12, 1, 2. That would be closed. Then it'd be an Indian restaurant, usually. So it's really funny because you didn't really go to many Chinese restaurants. The Chinese is very funny because it's all. And I remember speaking to Daniel Linero about this once. We were talking about how martial arts informs cultures and
Mm-hmm.
cultures inform martial arts. And then we started going off on tangents talking about cuisine and the different ways that the cuisine will actually it can illustrate like a national mindset. The best way to explain it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Chinese takeaway, like, you're in, you're out. The Chinese are like, we don't want to socialize with you. You buy the food and you go and do whatever you want with the food. That's it. We're cool. Whereas the Indians were big about making a community. Big, like, you go into an Indian restaurant and the tables were nearly next to each other, like, and you could budge a table together, start chatting to somebody, you go there. But the only thing of those is, the reason I'm saying this whole story is, I still say it in seminars now. I've never been scared of a Chinese waiter. So Bruce Lee was like 5'7". So if I was in a restaurant and I was going to dine and dash, Jamie,
Yes, sir.
where you eat, boom, out the door. yeah, apart from a couple of those guys that were in Big Trouble in Little China, I take my chance with most of them characters, right? But these Sikh dudes, no way. I would never run away from them. I always paid for my meal in an Indian restaurant. So that leads me on to, I remember being about 15, 16, and there was a little bit of a backlash against, in the UK, about Bruce Lee, only for the simple reason that people were saying, look, he's 5'7". Mm-hmm. If you put him up against a guy who's had the same amount of training as him, right? And he's 6'3", physics works. Like, it's the biggest lie ever in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Size doesn't matter.
Yes, sir.
Guess, right? You can get knocked over by a Pinto, or you can get knocked over by one of them new Tesla cyber trucks. Yeah, they're not the ones they're setting fire to. You know the ones that they deliver for Amazon, right?
Yeah.
But either of those two, you don't want to get hit with either of those, right? So anyway, size does matter. But I saw Dan in El Santo, and I was like, man, there's just something about this guy, like Yoda, like, you know. And then the more you hear about him, about how, because he'd made a promise to Bruce, that he went back to being a high school teacher. And yeah, I used to say this all the time to my dear friend and teacher, Terry Barnett, because Terry was like, I think you'd do the same, Mick. And I went, no. I said, I'd have sold out, man. Bob Wall and those boys and Linda Lee, you'd have a Jeet Kune Do school, because they always said, before Bruce Lee, every town in America had a church, had a saloon barn, had a hair salon. After Bruce Lee, it had a church, a saloon, hair salon, and a kung fu school or a karate studio, right? And I would have sold out, yeah? And I'd be like, but, you know, Guru Dan didn't. He's a man of character.
Yeah.
Which sort of leads me on to why I'll always defend him online, because he's got too much class not to defend himself. And when I see people trying to rewrite history, and you're like, no, come on, mate, don't be like that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I saw the Jeet Kune Do thing, and I was like, really want to do that. And then I started reading these magazines, and there's characters like Bob Breen, Rick Young, Phil Norman, Terry Barnett, Ralph Jones, you know, they're going over to America training. And I'm like, well, if they can do it, maybe one day I can do it. And I remember thinking that, right? It took me a good 10 years longer than I expected. But yeah, I met a lovely girl, fell in love. We had 3 children. And it's like, we can go into this in depth whenever you want, mate. But I see guys who have got a world-class roundhouse kick, world-class triangle, world-class jab, and they've got three marriages behind them. Yeah. And it's like, right, how is it that you can be a black belt in that, but you can't be a black belt in this? Because, you know, you've shown that you can be totally committed to making something work. Mm-hmm. And then so, and I know
things happen, right?
Things happen, Jamie, right? Things happen, but it's like, first of all, things happen if you don't. Like, I was quite lucky to a degree, and the other one as well is, you know, I'm a real cliche. I say this all the time, right? You know, when you hear people and they go, I love my wife, and they go, yeah, but do you like your wife? As a person, take this out of the equation. You just meet her. Do you like her? And they're like, no, I really like my wife. She's really funny, and she's been a great partner through this whole adventure with me. You know, got 3 wonderful children. And then I remember, between you and me, and everyone watching, I remember being a bit pissed off when I finally did make it over to America, because I was like, man, I could have been here 10 years earlier. Mm-hmm. I could have been, but maybe my wife might have left me. Yeah, if I'd have been that dogged. And you'll know this. It's like, sure. Yeah, we're coming into this stage of our life where, do you remember, Jamie, when everybody that did martial arts you thought were really cool, and now as you get older, you look at it and go, my friends who do martial arts are really cool, but there's a shitload of weirdos in there.
Oh,
and it's like,
doubt.
Yeah, and then it's like, right, okay. I said it to Dan Holloway. I was like, you know, the drive that you need to be exceptional, I really don't think you should have that. Yeah, like, that's the sign of a really, really disquiet soul. I think that's a really, really, like, that's not an admirable trait. That's why when you go online, all these life coaches, they're all in their 30s. Like this is why
You haven't lived life yet in your 30s. How can you coach me?
Mate, dude, you're in episode 1 of the series. Like literally, maybe episode 2 of Netflix. You're going to get lucky if you get picked up. It's like leads me on to like guys like Andrew Tate and characters like that. Literally, I look at these guys and I'm like, so they're professing to tell people, and it's quite funny because a bit like I like a lot of what Jordan Peterson says, but then there's parts of his stuff and I go, So there's self-sovereignty thing I believe in. And then, be a better version of who you're supposed to be. Yeah. And then they see that empathy and maybe not having to assert yourself as being weak. And you're like, no, that's behavioral flexibility. I'm not, imagine going into a job. I'm not going to take shit from anyone. Right. Okay. You're unemployable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because guess what? If you want to be a team player, mate, you're going to have to take that. And then especially like with Andrew Tate, some of his misogyny really, really like worries me. But the thing is with me, I'm a really balanced individual. So there's certain things. So if I said to you, I know right now I can polarize your audience by you asking me 3 separate questions, right? And first of all, if you ask me, I'd tell you my opinion. Secondly, I don't think you need to know my opinion, right? Because guess what? Make your own opinion up. It's with Tate, this is the one thing I will say about Andrew Tate. He talks about men becoming high value males, but at the detriment of what? So who has to pay for that? So a woman has to be subservient to you. And you're like, dude, before Abrahamic faith, we didn't believe in a deity. We didn't believe in a triumvirate. Yeah. So you look at the Torah, you look at the Bible, you look at the Quran, right? Before all of that, right? So you've got all, and there's some great lessons in those books, by the way, some great lessons in those books. But before that, what did we worship? And like, I'm not talking about like Gaia and Earth, like the Earth Mother and stuff like that. If we go right back to when we were like real simians, what did we worship? Fertility. What did we do? We venerated women. Why? Because these women can do magic.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to be really crude here. I can put a little part of my body into you, and then guess what? In 9 months' time, you create a little version of me and you. That's magic. Wait a minute.
Magic.
What? And then you can what? And you can feed that. Yeah. And then you look at it, like especially as humans, right? We are the most brittle. We have the longest. So we're one of the most brittle species on the planet, right? Our bones break easy. Like, we get wiped out generationally. Like literally, we're dead lucky now. Yeah. There's all 3 of my sons are teachers, right? 2 of them are historians. And when COVID hit, they were going, Dad, but the Spanish flu was 1920. And I was like, Spanish flu? And I did history at A-level. But what? And I went, Dad, the Spanish flu wiped out more people than both wars put together. I went, why aren't we taught that? And I went, why would we want to tell anybody that? And I was like, wow. And that freaked me out. But then if you look at the amount, like we have the most, we have the longest dependency period of, like you only have to watch a wildlife program. A zebra gives birth. Literally the mother licks it and it's walking. Elephant, it's walking. Most birds, you're gone. You're out. They tip you out of the nest. You've got to go. You look and like, even when we look at simians, chimpanzees, male chimps can't live together after they mature. They can't live together because they will kill each other. They're like us, right? We're not supposed to work in such huge numbers, Jamie. Yeah, there's that Dunbar number for a reason, right? We're okay to work 1,500 to 2,000 people. After that, our heads start hurting. Now, with this, I can reach out 5,000 people. Boom. I can reach out to 45,000 people if I go on Instagram. Yeah. And it's like, this is weird shit. But as I said, we used to venerate that. And that's what got us to we used to venerate and worship fertility. Then What did we do? We again, I'm sorry if I'm boring you, but the thing is,
I look bored, Mick? Look at me. I'm into it.
No. So 2,000 years ago, regardless of if you believe he was a Messiah, a great man walked this earth, changed the way we all thought. Literally a diametric 180 degree from what everyone was saying in that area at the time. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, smite your enemy, turn around and went, no. Turn the other cheek. Yeah. And then what that did was, I've always said this about faith, is whether you believe it or not, there's certain things you just got to accept. We made quantum leaps in understandings of morality and laws because we just listened to a bit of it. Mm-hmm. If we listened to more of it, I think it might have worked for us, right? And like as I said, that I wouldn't. Martial arts got me into this, right? Okay, so I can become a better person, right? So how can I help other people now become better people? And the big reason is, as I said about Andrew Tate speaking to a generation of fatherless men. So he's rocking up with a Bugatti, flexing his muscles, smoking a cigar, telling everyone about how great his life is, without explaining the fact that he's basically held women captive, made them undress online, made a load of money that way. And then people are like, yeah, but you should aspire to being him. And you're like, I'll tell you what, how about I do this? Why don't I just aspire to being Ted Bundy? Because at least he had a bit of charisma. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's like you see Bundy when he was doing interviews, man, the guy was good. Yeah, you know what I mean? It was like, and then I remember, how did he get into the car? And I'm like, I'm a straight dude. He'd have taught me to get into the car. You know what I mean? I didn't even have that centre parting thing that he was going for, which I have to admit, I'm going to go off on the tangent here now, right? But like, how much did those girls want to keep that haircut? Because there was a hype, like when Bundy, when girls started disappearing and they all looked exactly the same. Jamie, I don't know about you, but at that point, I'd have gone and got a perm. You know what I mean? It's like there's a high price I'm paying to have these bangs on the forehead there. You know what I mean? But yeah, sorry, I went off on a mad one there. I always do. I'm terrible for this stuff. Yeah, it's terrible.
Great. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. No. Honestly, that was great. One of the things I kept thinking to myself, when talking about the phone, we all know there are great fighters that many times believe their own hype and stay in it too long. Right? And so this thing almost allows me, right, to believe my own hype. I have the only opinion. There's an algorithm that will actually make sure that it takes my opinion and sends me back more reinforcements. When meanwhile, that's not the world we live in, right? It's conversations like these where people grow, but it doesn't happen on a short video.
No, well, you see, it's so funny you said this because, first of all, Joe Rogan proved it. Long form works, yeah? Long form works. Why? Because I need an hour or so to get to know you, to have a conversation, and we know each other.
Yeah,
right. We know each other, but you see, there's certain things that you go, right. Okay, so why would you do this? It's really funny. You said something that's quite amusing. So, first of all, the guy who invented the feed for Twitter, he admitted this, right? So when you refresh Twitter, yeah. So what it is, and they all do it now, by the way. Facebook do it. So guys who you're watching, get your phone out, put it down for a second. You'll see a story. Then there's that lag. There's only a lag for about 3 seconds, but it's enough time and it's timed to perfection for that release, that dopamine release of the reward, because it's the same technology that they used on slot machines in casinos. Because what the thing is, the slot machine in the casino is two things. Like now, when the people press the buttons, people are getting more and more into that. You get an old school gambler; he's got a repetitive strain injury from doing that. He's like a bachelor. If you guys, you I'm saying, Jay, I didn't say it. Your mind went there, right? So yeah, that's a guy whose girlfriend's left him, right? So see this here, he's got that repetitive strain injury all the time, right? But as he pulls down, it went back for a second, boom, 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 boom. And what it is, they know how the brain works. So what they do is they go, right, okay, we need that moment for that dopamine release. So it's like you said, that reinforcement of your own belief, right? It's one of the reasons why a great example, and I love this man to death. This give you an idea. This is how much I love him. That I never ever wind him up. Tim Betcher, I loved him, right? I loved him, and I love him to death. He's a great guy,
He is.
and I know that I could post one thing, and he'll look at it and go, "I know that isn't Mick, but I need to say something now," because me and Tim are exactly the same, right? So there's that, but then there's other people that you go, right, okay, you do realise that was just a joke. What I've just done is a joke. But the problem with social media, especially if you spend too much time in it, is it's like a biosphere. It literally is. It's like a hermetically sealed world, and you're Truman Burbank. You are Jim Carrey in there, right? That world revolves around you, and it's an echo chamber. And nobody ever has a dissenting voice, because you got to remember, once the first dissenting voice comes in, the domino effect will kick in, and people will kick off, right? And what we've got at the moment is you've got people who, first of all, I've got to be very careful how I do this. All my American friends, you're going to love what I say next, right? So if you want to have a valid argument in regard to politics, right, and the right, one person's inalienable right to be able to vote for who they believe in, right? And that you got to believe that's an important thing. You got to remember, in America, you guys live in a bold social experiment. Everyone was put in there. You're all different, and it worked for a while.
And hopefully, like an experiment all the time.
But you got to remember, like, think about it this way, Jamie. At the moment, you're baking a cake, and if we open up the oven now, it's going to go flat. Yeah. So we got to look at it and go, right, okay, just it's mad. Like, as I said, the greatest argument against a voter and democracy is a 5-minute conversation with your average voter from either side of the spectrum. Speak to either side of those guys, especially now because we're on the bell curve. Because the minute we're not at the top of the bell now, you're either there or you're there. And then the crazy thing that people don't understand is, if you just visualize the bell for a second, that's a hell of a long way from there to there. So right here, so right here, I've got blue hair, Jamie. Yeah, I got blue hair, and I've got a degree in interpretive dance. This side here, I have a 12 bore on a rack at the back of my truck, and I like to drink a beer on the way home from the bar, right? So both of those guys have more than enough right to live in the world, right? See this?
Absolutely.
But look at the bell curve. Do you see it?
Yeah.
But look at that. Look at how close they are on the bottom. That's the mad thing about that is the mad thing about this, like, seesaw politics that we've got going on at the moment, where we're swinging from one side to the other, and you go, yeah, but you don't realize, you guys are right at the end. You guys are right in the end. You're cool, but most of us are up around here somewhere, and we all have got on with each other forever.
Yeah.
And we don't really care. What are you doing? What? So is it illegal? Are you both consenting adults? Are you both happy? Like, we've all got 70 to 80 years on the planet, right? You've got to remember, this is an adventure, right? I don't want to stop you from being your authentic self. But then there's a point where you go like this. So, like in America right now, it's very fascinating to watch. What I would say is, I've been really flippant to this point, right? But the thing is, I don't want to lose any of the friends that I've made over 20 years over two people that don't care about me. They don't know who I am. I'm not going to get involved. Sun Tzu, right? I will win 100% of the fights that I don't get myself involved in, right?
Yeah, bro. But
at the same time, it's mad. It's like, the Chinese say, may we live in interesting times. We're living in interesting times. George Carlin also said, great thing about living in America, we're on a fucking road to Armageddon, and you got a front row seat.
Yeah.
So it's like, It's one of those. It's like, which brings it back paradoxically to martial arts, because one of the only places where we can actually get on with each other is where you're held accountable by punching each other in the head, strangling each other, and looking at something completely different. It's a real paradox. So you're right. So the whole. I'd like your take on this. So you see this, there's a big upsurge now in rage rooms, where you get these people going in and just smashing up inanimate objects and going crazy, right?
Like it's a rock star music video, like, whatever it is. But in all reality, no, I'm on lunch break. It's been a day. I need to smash something. It's fascinating.
But it's unreal, isn't it? It's like, right, okay, because that's the thing, right? I like this take on you, because we weren't designed to sit on a sofa, eat Cheetos, and then if we had, like, one of my dear friends, Al Peasland, he worked for a long time in Formula One, so it's a really glamorous business. Pardon me. The guys who work in that business are very alpha, whether a male or female. They're very driven, and it's really funny, because whenever they have arguments or like any real drama between each other, it gets to the point they go nose to nose, and then they'll call in HR, and they'll go, oh yeah, we've got this problem, we've got to sort it out. And Al would say to me, well, what would you do? And I say, I just tend to go around the corner. And he said, what? And I said, mate, it's construction site. Go around. How about this? You feel that strongly about it? Let's go around the corner, figure it out. I promise, guess what? I won't jump all over you like American History X. How's that? I won't go Ed Norton too much on you, right? That's the thing, right? But you don't get that now. So what we've got is you've got men who are emasculated. That's why jiu-jitsu is so huge now, because people are now realizing, especially men, that they don't need to be emasculated. They can go someplace where they can go up against another human being who's prepared to kill them. And then here's the real thing. This is what I love more about jiu-jitsu than anything, is they'll go in there and there's like 140, 130 pound woman who's a brown belt or a black belt. Like, yeah, I got to give props out to the professor herself, Gina Franson. Like, Gina's 5'2", 110 pounds, I think, like 3rd degree black belt now. And the work she's done in the community to empower women. And it's that whole thing where it's like, yeah, well, what happens if someone tries to like mug me or rape me or whatever? And you're like, well, how about we make sure that we get you in a place where mentally you'll avoid nearly all of that? How? The one thing about predators, you'd be the worst predator in the world if you were going up against someone that was the same as you, on the tail of the tape. They never do that. So they always go for weaker people. And that's the one great thing that jiu-jitsu's got. The problem is, at the moment, we've got a bit of a chicken and an eggs thing going on with jiu-jitsu as well, where you get in, and a lot of blokes are now talking and calling this out, is there was a little bit of a locker room sort of thing for a while, because there was more guys than women in it, yeah? And now when like women and girls are getting into it, there's guys, because it's predominantly, the explosion is predominantly at the moment with young men. So the thing is with young men is it's not their fault. A young man has an obligation to be a prick for quite a few years of his life, right? And it's like that old saying, if you meet a guy in his 40s and you ask him, was he a prick when he was in his 20s? And he says no, it's a pretty good chance he's still a prick, right? Because he just doesn't realise it, right? You like that one, yeah? You can have that one free, Jamie, right?
Well, what makes it funny is there's some truth, Mick, right?
100%.
Otherwise, it'd just be mean, right?
No.
I think that's what makes it funny.
So what you've got is you've got women and ladies coming into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So you've got the proximity issue. Then you've got the power dynamic where maybe a guy's in a higher position of authority, which by the way, it's one of the things that I really can't get my head around. Dating a student or having a relationship with a student, because I think it's a betrayal of trust for a start. And it's a bit like, sorry, but I've got to drop this one. It's like, you've seen Deliverance, right? The kid playing the banjo, right? Obviously, his mum and dad might have been related before they got married. You know what I'm saying? Probably cousins, right? Yeah. So like the thing is, just like you shouldn't marry your first cousin, right? I don't think you should date a student, because guess what? There's 8 billion people on the planet. So that's 4 billion women, right? So there's 2 billion over the age of 16, right? Take that down, boil it down to like 1%. So there's 2 million women doing jiu-jitsu, right? Okay. You've got the rest of those. You can date those. Why are you dating these girls? And we're having to now explain that there's certain things that you've got to do, which is just don't be a lizard. Quite a good moment to, I'll get the link and I'll send it over to you. One of the guests that you've had, the wonderful, he's like, trust me, one of my biggest influences in martial arts, one of my favorite teachers in martial arts, and easily one of my favorite people in the world, Diana Rathborn. Love her. You want to know what a badass hockey mum looks like. That's Diana, right? Damn. Diana is unbelievable and just such a wonderful person, right? And Diana wrote an article probably 15 years ago, and it was identifying the guys that shouldn't be in the gym. Really? And she does, yeah. Oh, trust me. You read it now, right? I'll get the link and I'll send it to you. It's visionary. It's visionary because just from the point of view, if you want to make money at this game, yeah, you got guys. I've got a guy who was one of my dear. Like, I still love the guy. He's a great guy, but he hit on nearly every woman that came into the gym, and it wasn't the fact that he was a bad man or anything like that. He was just a lonely guy, and most of his socializing was done in this area. Yeah, and yeah, that's one of the things, because one bad experience. So I'm very mindful of the FormABLE title that you got here. We do have these. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie. Gwyneth Paltrow was in it. It's called Sliding Doors. If you haven't seen it, it's great.
Okay.
And it's basically where that you have one moment in your life, which is a sliding doors moment. So in the movie, she's about to get on a tube train in London. And in one version, so you imagine it's 2 parallel timelines. So as a comic book geek, you'll love this. Yes. So you've got 2 parallel timelines working at the same time. And one moment has defined everything either way, and it's just forked off. It's gone that way, right? And once she gets on the tube, and she arrives back to her apartment 2 hours earlier than she was supposed to be, and catches her boyfriend in bed with this woman. Then the other one is she misses it, and by the time she gets back, chick's gone. And then obviously it's a real chick flick, but it's very, very good. But it illustrates the point that we all know all of us can trace a defining moment where it could have gone either way.
Yeah, brother.
And 9 times out of 10, you don't even choose that. That one decision has done everything. Sometimes it's not even a decision, right? So that leads me on to, you go and have one bad experience at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then there's a lifetime of joy you could have had because some lizard decided he was going to try and chat you up. And then what we've got is, because we've got social media, you go in, let's have a picture at the end of the class. I'll tag everybody in. Then you got some random who's not even spoken to you. Now he's able to find everything about you. Then he sends the message. And then it's like, you know yourself, you have to curate all of this space really, really, like, yeah, well, you have to be pretty fascist about it. It's like, mate, you've proven to me I can't trust you around women now, mate. And it's like, yeah, well, I just sent her a message. There was nothing in it. Well, why didn't you message him? Well, I'm not gay. Ah, now you're telling me more than you want me to know. Yeah, so it's like we're living in really interesting times in regard to, like, where martial arts, like, I'd like to put this question to you. Where do you think martial arts is going to go now in the post-COVID and like media savvy world where every blue belt is now looking for you to sponsor him to go to the Pan Ams? You know what I mean? It's like I'm a content creator, or I'm a social media influencer, and you're like, You live at home in the box bedroom with your mum. Years ago, mate, you'd be playing Dungeons and Dragons, and maybe, I don't know, dreaming of meeting Dharma one day or something. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So where do you think it's going to go?
Brother, I don't know. But as long as there's an evolution in martial sport and then martial art, right? And it's great. Like Sifu Rick says, we need to be aware, right, of martial sport, because back in the day there was all types of things you just couldn't do, right?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, like that guy, you have no idea, his kick will send you to the hospital. Meanwhile, he's not Bruce Lee. That's not really what would happen, and there's a fair chance he'll miss if you move,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's a piece of that. I don't know, but what I hope is that it doesn't end up being Bruce Springsteen's glory days, where, brother, because after the attributes tune down a little bit, then the concepts and the technique and the lessons really get a chance to kick in. But if someone is drawn to this because they get to go kick ass and take names twice a week, then when they can't kick ass and take names, are they going to be bitter and upset? Is there going to be no growth left? So I don't know where it's going. I don't know where this world's going, brother. But I hope that the art stays as a piece, right? That the art we can pass, we can help others. What you had said on the Empower podcast hit me about, we are in a position of service.
We are.
And it's hard when someone's puffed out, they're up front grabbing their belt in such a way. And ego will always be a part of martial art, because you're talking about two people, one person dominating another at some point, right? But
you've hit the nail on the head, right? So I'm brutal. I'll always mention serial killers and stuff. We could have another podcast about it another day. So that's one of those things that the whole thing about true crime always amuses me, because if you're single now, guys, now I hope all you single men now pay attention to me, because I'm going to help you get a girlfriend. What you need to do is just study loads and loads of true crime and be able to talk about it for hours on end. And do you know what you're going to be? You're going to be catnip for single mothers, because single mums love nothing more than true crime and serial killers. And then you're like, you'll watch that, but then you don't realize that, like, it isn't. It's quite a dangerous thing. This is leading me on to where what you were saying. You've got to be very careful of what you wish for, right? So it's like you get the guys that are drawn into martial arts because of ego. I was in there, and as I always said, look, one of my dear friends, he passed away, a guy called Tony Pillage. He was full of shit. I love this guy, but he was full of shit. And people used to say to me, he was doing pressure points and doing all this woo-woo mad stuff. And everyone was going, Mick, just by hanging around with him, he's not doing your reputation any good. And I went, why not? And they went, well, he's full of shit. And I went, yeah, but I'm quite full of shit too. And then it was like, the first time we ever met, we started chatting, and he did his spiel, and it was proper. You'd have loved him, Jamie. He was very like a P.T. Barnum. He was a real barker, like a carny bar, very carny the way he was, right? And roll up, he'd do all of that shit, right? So he was very, very good. And Pillage really made me smile, because with him, he knew his role and he was more than happy with it. When we first started talking, within 15 minutes, I said, Tony, you got to stop, mate. And he went, what? I said, save that for the marks, mate, not me. You got to remember, I've seen behind the curtain here. I said, I know what kayfabe is. And he went, what? And I was like, I had to explain to him about wrestling. And he was like, what? And I went, mate, there's certain people who know reality and certain people who don't know reality. And then he was like, and this is leading me on to the whole thing that you were saying. right? With Pillage is one of the only people I know that became a much better person because he got cancer. Because once he got cancer, he realised that the clock was ticking. So then he actually changed and tried to become a better person because of it. And it was quite interesting to watch him, because there was this jihad going on with him, because he wanted to still be full of shit, but he knew that he didn't have much time left. And we were talking about training and stuff. And he said to me, he goes, so what do you want out of this? And I went, I want to get my black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Why? Because I just, if I can do that, then I know that I was, I might have been a wimp when I was younger, but I'm not really a wimp now, and I can live with that. And I said, but then that's going to bring a lot more things coming in. He went, like, what? And I went, well, it's like Guru Dan says, he goes, your skill level goes that way, but your body will go that way, and you'll meet each other. And the other one is your body can go like this, or it can gradually go in. And I said, so what I want is I want to have a more holistic approach to it. And the reason I mentioned Pillage was crazy, because there's me looking at a time frame of 25 to 30 years. Because I was, 48 at the time. Something in 78, 80, that's a good number to get as a mammal on this planet. And then Pillage is there, and he's like 4-5 years tops.
Yeah.
That's what he was given. And so because he had a constraint on him, it was like your first teacher. Your first teacher might not have been as good a martial artist or as perceptive if he hadn't had that restriction, like liberation through restriction, as Bruce said, yeah? And it was like so funny. I really wish I'd have met the guy, because I like what you said, the comic book thing. And they go, right, okay, so how can you be more marginalized in America in that era, in that time period? So he was an albino and African American.
Yes, sir.
Whoa, yeah, Matt, yeah. He's got to be looking at life going, that bit where Jesus take the wheel and go, Jesus, you want me to drive a lot on this road, don't you? So of course, you know what I'm saying. But it was like what this leads me to is when you said about Bruce Springsteen. So funny, because Bruce Springsteen was the soundtrack to my youth. I've said this in a few podcasts. I had 2 moments in my life where I was really bad, where mentally I was in a really bad place and tried to kill myself. And the first time I went over, and I had the rope with me and everything, and I'd taken the rope from my dad's van. So because that was my big fuck you. I was like, right. Yeah, and when they find me, they go, where do you get the rope from? And looking back on it, it was really bad, because yesterday my father would have been 80. And I've always said this about my dad. When I was younger, I didn't know the man. You know what I mean?
I do.
And he was a great man when I was older. And to everybody, he was wonderful. But should he have got married? Probably not. Should he have had children? Probably not. Because he wasn't equipped for that. And you can't judge somebody just because they weren't equipped. That's like being pissed off with somebody with no legs and say, oh, you're not the best football player in the world, are you?
Yeah, catch up.
I haven't got any legs, man. So, of course, that was different. But the first time was I literally, as I said, the beauty of getting older is, all the bad experiences become anecdotes. So put a rope around my neck, tied it to a branch, jumped off, branch gave way. So first thing I was like, right, okay, you should work out what weight that branch could take. Secondly, people were like, well, how do you feel afterwards? I'm like, well, I walked over there. I was pretty pissed off because I tried to kill myself. And then I walked back and I was even more pissed off because I couldn't even do that correctly. And then the second time that had, again, this is so funny because I wasn't even going to share this part, right? But this is a FormABLE moment. I was at the Aston Villa football ground, which is a soccer team in England. And Bruce Springsteen was doing the Born in the USA tour, 86. And I went to see him live in concert on my own because I was this masterless fucking samurai. And I could have had loads of friends, but I wanted to be alone. I was like a proto-goth. You know what I mean?
Unique.
And I remember, I wanted to be unique, yeah. And then I remember being in this crowd and whatever he did. And it was really funny because the song that got me was The River. Because when you listen to that, I've said this a few times. If you listen to The River, that's basically my life. I come from down in the valley where Mr. Where You're Young, they bring you up to Lou like your daddy done. Yeah, I didn't get my wife pregnant at 17, but 22. Yeah, what did I become? I became a plasterer. Why? Because my grandfather and my father were plasterers. But that was all to come in the future. I didn't know that. But I just remember listening to that song and people were singing it and everyone was around, did that. Then he played Glory Days. Then he played I'm on Fire, which if you listen to the lyrics there now, man, bit Weinstein-y, you know what I'm saying? But then yeah. Hey, little girl, is your daddy home, right? And then obviously Thunder Road, Born to Run, always goes out, Born in USA. And I remember it was those last three songs. So it got me at the river and I was emotionally involved. And I was emotionally involved all the way through. Then when it came to the end, I remember looking around and thinking to myself, why the fuck would I not want to be part of this? Look at this amazing shit that's going on here. And I was just at a concert, you know, but like, that's the thing, the group thing, this whole thing works. But again, it has to be holistic, because if it isn't holistic, and it's like you were saying, like when we were talking about Glory Days, you know, everyone makes a joke. If I said to you, who was the greatest quarterback from Polk High? Yeah, we mentioned One Bundy earlier, right? Al Bundy, yeah. Would you want to get stuck in a lift with that fucking shoe salesman? No, because he's dead boring. He's talking about past glories. And that's going to lead me on to where, if you don't mind, this is where we'll wrap up, because I'm conscious of boring the arse off people. But the one thing that we've got to watch out for now is I truly believe that MMA and hard sparring and the fact that it hasn't been a regulated sport for such a long time, and now it is getting regulated, I truly believe that MMA is like the herpes of martial arts. It's going to come back. It's going to keep flaring up on us. Like 3 out of 4 adults are going to have it. Hey, I knew you like that one, Jamie. Yeah. Why did you go on the second date? Well, there was a console. Right. So anyway, right. So I digress. Right now, it's quite serious. CTE now is becoming an issue.
Yeah, bro.
Like, you know, BJ Penn was only last week on social media decrying the fact that some woman, that's how he referred to her, some woman had replaced his mother and was trying to have him sectioned. This some woman is his mother, and he's doing everything is just textbook pugilistic dementia 101 shit. It's like, you know, when people are like on about Mike Tyson lost it. Mike Tyson got hit in the head that many times. He thought buying a white tiger was a smart move. Look at Conor McGregor now. Conor McGregor is showing all of the signs of someone who's been hit far too many times in the head. He's a billionaire, great, but he will get that sudden memory loss. We've seen it in every single contact sport in the world. In England, we have it with soccer, from heading the football. That's banned now. CTE now in hockey, right? Because I'm a huge hockey fan. And the era of Ty Domi, Bob Probert. So I met Bob Probert. I believe it or not, I saw Gretzky play in Germany when I lived over there, right? And like that Probert took his own life. A good friend of mine, Wade Belak, who he played in Coventry when we had the lockout for the NHL. He came over for 2 seasons and played here. Wade did. Wade was a really cool guy. He was a rock star. He didn't need to come out. He came over to play because he loved the sport. 3 years later, hung himself because they took these repeated shots to the brain. And it reminds me of I can't remember the name of the actor who said it, but it was the kid who was in Patch Adams with Robin Williams. You guys will be able to check it out later. And this kid used to go in and see Robin Williams in between takes because Robin was a big hero of his. And Robin didn't have CTE. Well, Robin didn't have CTE, but he had something very similar to it. But that was from the cocaine abuse. And he walked in, and it was an unannounced. So he used to always say to Robin, "I'll come and see you." And they go in, they'd hang out, shoot the shit and stuff like that. And then he went in one day, and as he went in, and like, I'm just going to do it now. Robin's like that, banging his head off the desk. And he walks in. This kid says, "Robin, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And he turns around and he just goes, "Kid, don't ever take drugs." And he went, "What?" He says, "You see out there, for that hour and a half, that's who I'm supposed to be. But for the other 23 hours, I have to live with this. Yeah. And it was like, live with what? You know, I have to live inside of my own brain with all of the damage that I did to me. And like that's the crazy thing. Like, you know, I've seen guys take horrific shots to the head. And for what? You know, it's like, you know, this will wrap it all up for us now, because this is a good place to quit, right? If you look at America right now, it's just bread and circuses, man. Yeah, you got all of this mad shit going on where you've got neighbors falling out with each other over people that don't care about them anyway. Mm-hmm. And what are they doing? We'll put on American, like, I don't want to sound like Bill Hicks, we'll put on a new season of American Gladiators. You know what I mean? It's like, the UFC's on. Oh, Monday Night Football's coming in. And you're like, right, okay. But, you know, we've got bigger things we've got to think about here. And it truly is. It's one of those things where, me personally, this is my take on it all. America's big enough and old enough and beautiful enough to be able to take the poor and huddled masses. At the moment, there's inequity. I get that. But there's inequity in every society in the world. Yes, there is. Like when people start talking about America and they go, oh, well, you know, the disproportionate amount of wealth. Right, okay, I'll tell you what, go to India and you'll find people that are in, say, the Jamal caste. And it doesn't matter, they could be physicists. And guess what? Society will look at them and just go, they can only shovel shit for the rest of their life and generations wide. And that's the bad part about being a human. The bad part about being a human is we will create a hierarchy and then we will defend the hierarchy if, unlike me, I don't care. Yeah, my world, in my world, I want everyone to be a black belt. I want everyone to have what I've had, which is fucking an awesome ride. Yeah, I'm hoping I get another 30 years, but like 30, if I'm still here in 30 years' time, it'll be from here upwards in a jar of formaldehyde next on a shelf next to Walt Disney's head under Cinderella's. You know, people used to say that, right? Like, yeah, you know the score, man. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think it'll be that. What I do know is in 25 years' time, I'll maybe just be a distant memory, man. And it'll be like, yeah, my biggest crime, he talks too much. That's one of my favourites. It's like, oh, I had Mick on a podcast. Did you say much? Well, no, we just wound him up and let him go. And you're like, this is what happens when you get ADHD and give it free rein and then turn around and go, embrace it. That's the thing with me. You see these characters now and they're going, oh, I'm on the spectrum. And you're like, you say that like it's a bad thing. Yeah, this is the fucking superpower. Yeah, you're really obsessive. What, you like attention to detail? I'll tell you something. If I have a heart surgeon, do you know what I want? I want the most obsessive, ADHD, autistic. I want a guy who's almost non-verbal. You know, I want that guy who's like, don't talk to me. Yeah, too busy saving lives here. Right? That's who I want. You know what I mean? So yeah, that, like I said, that's the only thing I've got. I'm very conscious that I just have taken over and just talk shite. I hope, like, if you don't mind, I'd just like to say, like, thank you, wise, just literally everybody, yourself included, great people that I've met, you know, through this. My hopes for the future, I hope that we all get through. Like, some people are going through hell, some people are thinking this is heaven. And it's like, if you're going through hell, I feel for you. Yeah, I really do feel for you. But it's like, I certainly don't want to stop talking to anybody because of political leanings or opinions on anything. Yeah, like, you know, the one thing I know about you, Jamie, is like the one thing when it comes to faith, the one thing that we are all supposed to have if you're a Christian is to be tolerant. Yeah. I've said this so many times before. Yeah, what martial arts has taught me is that I can be tolerant of people, because if I didn't have the ability to rip some of these fucking guys' heads off and shit down their neck, I would do. But because I've got the ability to do that, I've got the ability to go, okay, that's your opinion. And then the beauty of me is I just go, right, so that's one thing we can never ever talk about again. And then if I ever see it getting steered into that direction, I go, this will only end up one way. Because it is that whole thing where it's like, I think what social media's done, which is really horrible, is it's shown people warts and all, so you can get a really well-rounded picture of a human being. But the only problem is we only deliver that in a snapshot.
Yeah.
So we got the TikTok generation. So like, trust me, I'm convinced. I don't want to demonetize you here, but do you remember that guy?
I'm not
that guy with
monetizing, Mick. I'm not that big into it. I told you, we're going to piss people off. Fine with that.
Right. So you remember that guy? You know, Elon Musk just did that impression of him there with the funny moustache and all of that, right? So that guy was a horrible individual. Yeah, we can all be in agreement.
Yeah.
But that guy over in Germany was a horrible individual. But if he had a Facebook account, I could make him look like Mother Teresa because I could catch the little bits, put them all together, and then be like, you know, he was a vegetarian, don't you? Yeah. No, that's the best we can get for this guy, you know. So, I think that's what the problem is. Like, and there is real malevolence at work. Like, again, it's that red ants, black ants thing, yeah. Because it isn't the guys. It isn't, you know, boring working stiffs like me and you trying to just pay the bills. It's not they just want us arguing. It's, again, I always have to quote Carlin or and another big hero of mine was Norm Macdonald. You ever get a chance to watch either of those two? But it was like, you know, it's like Carlin said, yeah, they're pissing on our heads and telling us it's raining. And it is the truth. It's like everything out there. I don't want to sound like a right conspiracy theorist, but yeah. First of all, the moon landing's fake. No, I'm not going to say that. Yeah? But I don't know. That flag waved a little bit too much. No, I'm being silly. There's people at work who don't want us to get along very well.
Yeah. Simple
as that. And if you want a clue, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, BlackRock, name them, Nestle, you know, it's not in their best interests for us to get on with each other. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm certainly not going to fall out with anyone over it. But, you know, it's one of those. But Jamie, it's been an absolute joy, man, to hang out with you. Are you looking well?
Feel good.
Yeah.
You look
good.
Wait a minute. Yes, sir. That's what I'm talking about. Now,
TRT's the money shot.
The money shot. Usually,
the money shot.
I'll ask if there is like an action step or something like that that people can do, but I'm going to draw from the conversation, okay?
Do it.
I honestly believe our viewers, if there's one thing you could work on this week, is being tolerant of others and tolerant of other people's views. And if we could just stop yelling for a few minutes, we just might learn something.
Amen. You see, I literally had this conversation with an apprentice at work. I was trying to teach him something and he was talking to me. And it's like, well, you'll know this, you know, in class, you've always got that one guy, they're always an asshole. You know what an asshole is, right? Yeah. So you're there and you're like, right, I can't teach you because your brain isn't in the learning mode now. You're in the conversational mode.
Yeah.
And it's like I know it sounds really ironic for a guy who's just talked shit for like an hour and a half. But it's, just listen. With me, I'm terrible because it's like, I'll take over because I'm like, right, so what are you going to say? Yeah. You're saying it like that awkward silence? No. But especially right now, America, it's I don't want to say it's worrying because like you had worrying moments there. Mm-hmm. Like I really hope that was the worst. Right now it's over half of your population voted for somebody. You got to deal with it.
Yeah,
you know, it's one of them. Did you choose it? No, but guess what? You got to live with it because price you pay for democracy. Again, this all it always amuses me about America because so many of you guys don't understand just how beautiful that piece of legislation that was. Like when you literally got the Bill of Rights first of all. You got it. And then they go, right, the Constitution. And like the Bill of Rights, first of all, yeah, we've got a variation of that. But then we got the Constitution. Go, right, so what is it? So what's the first? So what's the First Amendment? Right to assembly, right? Second, what's the right to bear arms, right? You guys were well smart, really, really smart. What's your fifth? Right, I'm not going to say anything because I might incriminate myself by saying something. Right, so that means what are you doing? You're first of all telling people that you don't want them to lie. Right, don't put yourself in the position to do that, right? So the thing is, there's a lot of people that are going, yes, you know, it's not constitutional. You go, well, what you got to remember is your right to free speech doesn't mean it's everything you agree with. That's the crazy thing. It's like there's certain things you can't shout. You can't shout fire. Everything else you can say. Well, yeah, but he's an asshole. Well, great, because guess what? Now I didn't have to make up my mind and form an opinion, because my opinion now is based on his actions. He's told me he's an idiot by what he's told me. If I shut him up, what are you going to do? Right? So right now, it's like, it's very, very weird, because I have friends of mine who are lovely people and I see them getting very worked up over stuff. And I'm like, right, okay. Yes, what's your views on Trump? And I said, liked him on The Apprentice. I thought he was good. Thought he was a pretty shit wrestler at that time that he went up against Vince McMahon. You know what I mean? But you know, liked him in Home Alone too. Yeah, but as a president, I don't know. What I do know is that's the logical conclusion of allowing the cult of personality to enter politics, and then for you guys to go, well, I really like him, and you go, no, and you're like, what about statesmen? You go, well, you had John McCain, should have gone for him. You had Bernie, yeah, but I don't really like Bernie. He seemed like he was a compassionate guy. Right? You had Tulsi Gabbard. Oh, I don't like Tulsi Gabbard. Wait a minute, she was a woman of colour. She was a veteran. Well, she looks like everything that you say that you really like. You know, no, like Obama. Yeah, Obama did some good stuff, did some pretty naughty stuff as well. Right, okay, and it's really funny because as you get older, you look at it and it's so funny, because I know we're wrapping up, but now you got me on something. It's like, so Nixon, yeah, Nixon was a rat, and then they look at Carter and people say, look at Carter, oh, he was weak, the only president to not fire a shot while his administration was there. Yeah, but he got run over by everybody. Okay, what about? Here's the mad thing. Like, if we really want to look at who your best president has been in, say, our living memory, so we have to take JFK out of the equation, because that's 5 years before I was born. Lyndon B. Johnson, not a good guy, I'm afraid to say. Lyndon B. Johnson didn't look like he was a great guy. Nixon, not so much either. Reagan, Jesus, yeah, unbelievable. Like Reagan, I literally, and we will wrap up on this, because if there's a better way to leave it, it's this, right? We need a president who would be able to come back and do this. Ronald Reagan was in Ireland on a St. Patrick's Day, and he was saying, you know, it's so good to be here, and we're here celebrating. It's St. Patrick's Day. He was born on this day in the year, I'm making up the number now. It's like 920 years of age, and he drove the snakes out of Ireland, which we now know is, he didn't drive snakes out of Ireland, he drove paganism out of Ireland, right? So basically, he helped kill a load of people and make people believe in something else. But that's a different story. But Reagan turned around and he says, and he was born on this day in the year 922. He goes, just leave it to the Irish to still keep celebrating all this timeline. And it's like, you do that now, and it's like, oh, he's racist against the Irish. And you're like, no, it's like, really, it's, again, it's like Dave Chappelle said when Trump got in 2016, Chappelle turned around and he said, I was ready to come here and I was going to give him the worst write-up of all time. He goes, but let's give him a chance. And then the problem is, you only have to look at how it worked. His administration, everyone seemed to be doing okay economically, right? Yeah, there was a lot of drama, certain stuff that he promised that he would do, he did it. Biden came in, didn't really deliver on what he was going to do. A lot of people that were living on, a lot of people out there were going, this isn't for me. And what it's proven is, first of all, I think the world is more nuanced than a two-party solution anywhere, right? But what else are we going to do? What we do know is this, right? You get enough bureaucrats together. If you think shit can't get done well, add more bureaucracy to it, and then you'll be able to confirm that belief. Because the more people you throw at a problem, the less chance you're ever going to get it. So, like, yeah, my only wishes to the guys who are watching this is, like, you know, either side of, like, I have to use the political spectrum at the moment because so many people are using that to define themselves as people. Mm-hmm. And it like, it's so bizarre. You know what I mean? Because I have friends on both sides. But all it is, Jamie, first of all, loved you from day one. You're a great guy. You're doing great work in martial arts and in life in general. You're just a really cool guy. Next time I see you, first beer's on me. And then to all of my friends from either end of the spectrum, I love you. You know, shit, you guys know me and still like me. And if you don't like me, then fucking, you are really, really good at pretending you like me. You know what I mean? But it's like, yeah, if you don't have the odd dissenting voice in your life, yeah, if you literally live in an echo chamber where everybody agrees with you, first of all, it must be boring. And secondly, you've never, ever been married. Because trust me, speak to any married man or woman, and if you want to find the complete opposite opinion to nearly everything on the planet, speak to my wife because she thinks a completely different way. And, you know, that's it. But, bro, so good to see you, man. All right?
So good to see you. Thank you for coming. And real quick question. This is something I think about all the time. You know, for our friends over in the pond, sometimes, I don't know, I look at my own country and I think, I wake up and I think on today's episode of America, we have BAM. And that's pretty legit right now. And thank you for coming on the show and sharing your opinions, as well as your experience, right? Your strength and everything that you brought. Exactly. Everything that you... It's going. I think I see it. No, that's it. Everything that you brought to the table, and every time that I get a chance to spend 2 minutes with you, it's always a pleasure. And thank you for coming here on the FormABLE podcast. And on the other show I saw you on, you had mentioned a gentleman that used jiu-jitsu to deal with his addiction.
Yes.
Could you help me get him on the show? Because I think that's an important story.
Mate, I'll tell you what, I would love to. He's, believe it or not, he's only a blue belt, and he's only a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. He's one of the loveliest men that I know. And his name's Dave Welton. I'm going to give him a shout out now. And when I asked him why he took up martial arts, because he took up martial arts late in life, and I asked him why, and he said, because I had a daughter and I knew I wouldn't be able to protect her. Mm. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, this is why. And he's a feisty guy, man. He's like, Dave's a handful. He's just easily one of the nicest guys ever. And I'll hook you up with him. And anyone else, if there's anyone out there that you want me to hook you up with, I will do. All right. You got to remember, I famously turned down Steven Seagal. And I'll tell you that story. Yeah, we had to go down to Russia House. And this is I'll leave you with this one. We had to go down to Russia House to get our visas to go to Moscow, right? And we were going there to interview Steven Seagal. Like, you know, the guy who said he was a CIA guy. Like, he's the biggest bullshitter. Like, as my father used to say, he's a bigger bullshitter than George McGrath, who was this guy that my dad worked on to build his own one, which doesn't really resonate with anyone. But now, the thing is, my dad would love the idea of me sharing that with everyone. But we were going to go there, and then I'm just a little bit of background on why he was there. And then it worked out that he can't leave Russia because he's Interpol are after him for like human trafficking. Can you believe that? So that's Steven Seagal. So next time you watch Under Siege, right? And you know what? This is the thing. We'll bow out on this, right? You want to talk about the hypocrisy of martial arts, right? So he's on Under Siege, and he said that he was a Navy SEAL. Bullshit, right? Yeah. Then he was in Marked for Death, and he said he was Mason Storm, and he wasn't a cop. Bullshit. My worst one ever. Do you remember when he was there and on Deadly Ground, where he was dressed up like Greta Thunberg's granddad, and he was crying about Eskimos and shit like that? Yeah. Yeah, so who is this guy? This is a guy. This is a guy, and he beat up. I'll tell you, he beat up a guy out of the Last Dragon. Yeah. I don't know what the guy's name was. He was the guy who was Eddie. I'm really showing my age here. For you guys who don't watch it, if you haven't seen The Last Dragon,
amazing.
Imagine hip hop and kung fu together. Bruce Leroy, right, and the Shogun of Harlem. But yeah, this guy was Eddie Arcadian's bodyguard, and that's the guy that when Steven Seagal's dressed and he's got like the Inuit jacket on him and stuff. Yeah. And he goes in and he breaks his fingers and then he says, "Tell me you're going to be a better man." And I'm like this thinking, like as I said, the guy believes his shit more than Greta Thunberg. And at least Greta Thunberg had a problem, you know what I mean? She was like me, she had the old ADHD. Steven Seagal was just a liar. So yeah, don't ever trust a man. Don't ever trust the man who said he was in the SEALs. All right? But peace and love, brother.
Peace and love once again.
And you're like this, Jamie. For all of you guys out there, that's a subliminal message I'm just sending to you now. Oh, Jamie, now you've got me.
Illuminati. It was right there. I felt it for just a second. Once again, this is Jamie Sparling of Affinity Martial Arts and the FormABLE podcast with Mick Tully from MKG Coventry.
I
have a rash guard that I wear that I know that I look at it every week and I got it wrong. God bless you.
You wear that rash guard. Mate, you got the rash guard every week. You got the Game of Death one, right? Or did I give you the which one did I give you? The red one. I
have the choking hazard, and then keep your friends close and your elbows closer.
My wife has just come in, Jamie. She won't want to say hello, will you, Annie?
Hello.
Yeah, she just said hello. Yeah, she's just gone for afternoon tea. So I have to love you and leave you, brother. All right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Enjoy your time. I'm going to have you back on the FormABLE podcast again. I really appreciate you, Mick. Have a great Sunday.
That's it. You too, brother. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.